The following program is recorded live and it is intended for all audiences. Let's go.
Trubisky being rushed, throws to the end zone for Deion Sims. He's got it for a touchdown.
Bears Hour Live, Bears Hour Live. One straight hour of Bears talk with Bears Grl and that draft Dr. Phil guy. Monday through Friday, the Barroom's got you covered. VHL place the tags, cause Fuller's got you smothered. Draft Dr. Phil, it's always hit sticks. Splitting double teams like 96 Akeem Hicks. Our line keeps growing, Mitchell keeps throwing dimes on time, but in the window weeds blowing. No denying that this show is a collaboration with a fan. Bears Grl moderated, Dr. Phil is the man. Bears Hour Live, Bears Hour Live. One straight hour of Bears talk with Bears Grl and that draft Dr. Phil guy. Bears Hour Live, Bears Hour Live, Bears Hour Live. One straight hour of Bears talk with Bears Grl and that draft Dr. Phil guy.
Dumped again. Akeem Hicks.
The show where we always bring the truth.
Eddie Jackson. Touchdown Bears. Trubisky to the 42-yard line. Oh, my goodness. Howard left side to the 10, to the 5. Game over.
Bears Hour Live, Bears Hour Live. One straight hour of Bears talk with Bears Grl and that draft Dr. Phil guy. Bears Hour Live, Bears Hour Live, Bears Hour Live.
I would just say it's clicking, and I am feeling it. I'm feeling that anticipation. The offense is starting to slow down. The installs have become smaller and smaller, and we just become more specific with what we're running on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and I'm able to process faster, and that just allows me to play faster, getting out of the huddle, faster tempo, and I just go through my reads, and I know exactly where the ball needs to go, and that's when I could really just throw it and dice them up. So we're having a lot of fun out there, and that's when everything's fun, when we're just not thinking too much, going out there, playing fast and executing, and that's when I feel I can put the ball wherever I want on the field.
Hello, Bears fans. Welcome to Bears Hour Live with Draft Dr. Phil. You just heard Mitch Trubisky talking to the media after an excellent day of practice that had him fired up. My name is Bears Grl, and I'm fired up too after spending a very long weekend in Bourbonnais watching the Bears practice, spending time with the Godfather, Trey Busy, Tooch the Goon, cameraman extraordinaire Greg Bragg, and meeting some of our awesome Barflies like Aaron, Chad, and Ryan. The only thing that would have made the trip absolutely perfect is if you, Doc, had actually been able to make it out as well. Phil, if your weekend was as good as mine, then you are walking on sunshine. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm fired up. I'm excited. I'm really excited about where we're going.
And so is the chat room. They are just flocking in every couple of seconds. Someone else joining us. We have a special guest with us tonight. So why don't you go ahead and introduce who that special guest and friend of yours is?
Yes, tonight, as you know, we have a man who walks the walk. He pulls no punches when it comes to his truth. And this is the show about the truth. 30 years of NFL scouting experience, 9 years as the scouting director of your Chicago Bears, Pro Football Weekly writer, and the guy whose draft magazine was the #1 selling draft magazine in the world. He's the Bears analyst on 670 The Score, Chicago's #1 sports station, and a guy I call friend. The incomparable Greg Gabriel is in the house tonight. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing real good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Great. We are excited to have you here. Barflies, that's what we call the fans of our Bears Barroom show. As you know, they often interact with you because you are a guy that's not afraid to call out Jason Lacavora, a Pro Football Talk, a Da Bears, a blogger,
whatever it is, Greg is going to speak his truth, and that's why I love this man. Greg, thank you for joining us tonight. We got to get into it right out the gate. First, how you feeling about the Chicago Bears so far this preseason that you've seen?
I've been down to camp a few times, watched the game the other night. I think it's par for the course. I don't get all excited about training camp like a lot of people do because I've been to over 30 of them, over the course of the years and spent weeks there. It's a process. It's a daily process. You've got to plan for every day. The whole idea of training camp is to get your team prepared for the regular season, find out who the new players are going to be on that team, what veteran players aren't going to be with the team any longer, that type of thing. There's, what they do in each particular game really doesn't mean a lot to me. I've seen teams that have looked horrible in the preseason. I'll give you one example. My last season with the Giants was the 2000 season. When I left training camp, my thought process was we'll be lucky to win 4 games. Well, we won the NFC title and went to the Super Bowl that year. So it's really about getting the team ready to play for the regular season, and whether they win or lose in the preseason is meaningless. It's getting guys ready to play and finding out who is going to play.
Now, Greg, the elephant in the room, obviously, especially with a guy that has your experience scouting these players, Roquan Smith's situation, what's the holdup as a front office guy? When would you start to worry with the GM? And could this thing go into the season in your mind?
I don't think it's going to go into the season, but, there's room for concern. From what I understand, everything that we've read in the papers isn't necessarily 100% accurate. There is a major holdup that has to do with language and has to do with suspensions, with about on-the-field activity. And the Roquan Smith camp isn't about to give in on it at all, especially when there is not another rookie in this rookie class that has clauses that cause him to lose guaranteed money if, in fact, he gets suspended for on-the-field activity.
Well, in this kind of situation, because you've been there, you built teams that I love. You're a part of that, the Charles Tillmans and companies. But you've also been an experienced agent in how they handle their players, and you've had players, hold out. So when you have a standoff like this, first, have you ever experienced it? And is there that communication daily, or is there like tension and they don't talk for days? And all of a sudden, how does the adult get the kid in camp? Is that one of these things, or this is huge in regards to this kid's rest of his life and livelihood?
Well, first of all, it's going to get done. You just got to be patient about it and wait till it gets done. And with both sides to come to a time when they said, you know what, enough's enough, let's get this thing done, they could probably work it out in 10 minutes. But it hasn't reached that point yet. Now, when you look at holdouts in today's game versus when I first came into the league, there was holdout. There was 10, 12, 14 holdouts every camp, and a lot of times they lingered through 2 preseason games. Generally, you got guys, the final guys signed in the week leading up to the 3rd preseason game, and then they had a couple of weeks to get ready. A lot of it was veterans, and you had some rookies. It's a totally different game now, and really the holdout is a rarity, but camp's the same. You're in camp the same amount of time. The only difference in camp between then and now is there's no 2-a-days, but at the same time, Roquan Smith had 3.5 weeks of the off-season program to get up to speed in the defense, the terminology, what he was being asked to do. So it's not like he's totally off the map, so to speak, as far as knowing what he's supposed to do when he gets into camp. Is he going to be ready to go and 100%? No. I mean, he's a rookie. He's going to need reps, and the longer this the holdout lasts, the less we're going to see him, I think, in the first few weeks of the season. But again, that's it. It's part of the negotiation game. It happens now and then. It's unfortunate, and it's happening to the Bears. It's unfortunate that it's happening to Roquan Smith, but at the same time, you got to respect what he wants. You got to respect what the Bears want to do, and sooner or later they'll make an agreement.
Yeah, we hope sooner rather than later, because it's been an A-plus offseason, and this, as you know, as football, we hate distractions, and this, obviously, for the young head coach, every day he's going to be asked the question. The pace is laughing. There's nothing new, so I hope it gets done, Greg. But let's get into football now. When you look at a Barfly actually gave me this question. It was really good. And when you look at some of these young players in these games, especially like what happened with the Hall of Fame game, some of the guys that might probably not make the team, how much is the GM and the pro director as well as the college director involved in grading their performance, and what are they looking for, per se, for possible practice squad and 53-man roster?
Well, number one, every player is being graded literally on every play in practice that they're involved in. You have the tape. You review the tape at the end of practice. With technology the way it is now, before you get to your room, after practice is over, before you can take the 5-minute walk over to where the dorms are, where the coaches are staying, the tape's all done. It's in their computers, and they can sit down and review the tape. So everything is looked at numerous times. You're grading every play of every player in practice and in games. And so you really got a good idea whether the guy can play or can't play. What we don't know, being on the outside looking in, is if the guy has a missed assignment, we have no idea if he does or he doesn't, because we don't know exactly what he's being asked to do. You can guess, and sometimes it's very obvious, but there's times a receiver might run a route wrong. A defensive player might fill the wrong gap or whatever, and there's little things like that where sometimes it looks like the guy's making a play and he's really doing something wrong. And when they review the tape, you find those things out, and then you use that as teaching tools in the next meeting and then in practice going forward. So you're always, and especially with the young players, you're always looking for the player to improve from practice to practice. The problem you have, and this is what some fans don't really understand, is when a young player might show a lot early in camp. But then if he starts to level off and he doesn't start going, the arrow is, stops going up, so to speak, then that means he's probably hit his ceiling, and that's as good as he's going to get. And you look carefully for that. And when you see it and you don't see that improvement, then that's a player that, even though he may have had some nice moments early in camp, he's a guy that probably won't be on the roster. Now, there are going to be young players that they're going to hit a point where they're going to level off some, but then they're going to start climbing the stairs again. And that's what you look for. And if you don't see it, his time's up.
Was there anybody who stood out to you particularly well when you were there? I could go through a bunch of guys, and some guys I saw get a lot of praise from people either in the press or in different blogs or whatever, was Kylie Fitz. I thought Kylie Fitz played a very average game. Sure, he had a sack, he had a pressure, and so that stuff jumps out because he's an edge guy. He's supposed to be able to rush the passer. At the same time, he did very little against the run, and when he got into one-on-one blocking or one-on-one situations with Orlando Brown, the big offensive tackle, the Ravens rookie from Oklahoma,
he got smothered, and he couldn't get off the blocks. He got driven off the ball. So you got to see him, even though he has some pass rush skills, you got to see him now in this next game against Cincinnati be able to play at the point of attack a little bit better, be able to use his hands better, get off blocks quicker so he can make plays in the run game. There's a second-year tackle who played a lot because of the way they use personnel. Now, back up a little bit for that. I think one of the unique things of having that fifth game was that there's young guys who got a lot of play time in this game against the Ravens last week that ordinarily wouldn't have gotten that amount of play time. So that gave the coaching staff and the personnel evaluators a lot to look at, a lot to study, and then, what they think of these players we'll start to see in the coming weeks, starting Thursday night against Cincinnati. If you see guys that played a lot on Thursday night, but then play little or not at all this coming Thursday, that's not a good sign for that player. But then getting back, the second-year offensive lineman, who really was a defensive lineman last year, Coward from, I think he's from Old Dominion or Virginia Union. Big guy, never played on the offensive line before. He's showing some promise, but at the same time, is he going to make the team? That's going to be a tough call, and it's really going to depend on how many guys they decide to keep on the offensive line. Are they going to keep 8 or 9? Generally speaking, teams try to keep 8. They dress 7, and then you've got a guy, the long snapper, but he really doesn't count as that. He's counted as a specialist. But if you can keep 9, he's got a good chance of making the team. If you keep 8, then it could be a problem for him. And a lot of that has to do with his inexperience at the position. He is like a rookie all over again, and even more than a rookie because he's never played the position before. This is the first year he's done it, and I think for the little amount of time that he's played at the position, he showed a lot of promise, but still the coaching staff, especially when you only keep 8 or 9 linemen, they're going to want a guy that they can rely on if he has to go in because of injury. So that'll be a really interesting situation to watch going forward to the next 4 preseason games.
Yeah, I really liked that football player. As you know, I thought this could be a guy. Maybe they try to stash him too. They've been known to do that. You have a project and get something out of him rather. The big story and the stance that we had here at Bears Barroom, we went live after the game, Greg. I don't want to sway you, but I thought as far as coaching was concerned, Kevin White not playing in the Hall of Fame game was a mistake. What was your take on that? What is your feeling in regards to that?
Well, yeah, I was hoping to see him because you want to see him do something, being that he's only played in 5 games since he's been a Bear over the course of 3 seasons. But at the same time, you look at what their philosophy or idea was going into this game, and it was to look at the young players, and there's like 28 or 29 guys that didn't play at all. And I think for the most part, they have a pretty good feeling for those guys, that these guys are at this point in camp, and it's not a lock because there's still a long way to go in camp. At this point in camp, they're saying these guys are probably going to be here, and so we want to see who the rest of the depth is. And then you're going to start to see these other guys starting this week, and you're not going to see a whole lot of them this week either. You're going to see more, guys like Kevin White. You're going to see more of them this week than obviously did last week, as it didn't play, but it's really going to be next week and the week after that they're going to get the bulk of playing time. Because remember, the idea is just to get them ready for the season, and what they do in the preseason is really meaningless.
No,
that's what practice is for. And you're practicing, and like when you just look at the offense, what they're doing on offense. Okay, if you go down to Bourbonnais and you watch practice, you're seeing a lot of motion, a lot of movement, a lot of different kind of plays, exotic type plays, or they're forcing the ball or pushing the ball downfield, not forcing it, really pushing the ball downfield, trying to open up stuff underneath. Didn't see any of that last week, and they're not going to show that during the preseason. Why should they? That's a strategic and competitive advantage for them not to use that in the preseason game, so that, Green Bay has no idea other than, formations that they saw in preseason and then looking at Kansas City and Philadelphia tape. But, how Kansas City played last year and how Philadelphia played last year, that isn't necessarily how Matt Nagy is going to run the offense.
Exactly.
Because he's got different people. He's got a more mobile quarterback. He's got different types of receivers, a different type of running back. So his personnel groupings and how he uses people and how plays are going to develop are going to be, even though the plays may be similar, they're still not going to be the same. And not showing that during the preseason is an advantage for the Bears going into the first couple of games.
Now, I'd be dropping the ball, so to speak, like one of these young wide receivers if I didn't bring up Skip Bayless came out and blasted Mark Hatley, first calling him a GM, which you corrected, and he was interpreting that he wanted Plaxico Burress, Mark Hatley did, over Brian Urlacher, who went into the Hall of Fame this weekend. I mean, one of the greatest linebackers ever to play for the Bears. You knew him. You were around him. Clearly not the story you know. First, I wanted to give you opportunity to tell the truth about that, and then just talk about Urlacher for a minute.
Well, obviously, I wasn't here for that draft. I was with the New York Giants at the time. But at the same time, when we came in, we inherited the same scouting staff. We inherited the same coaching staff. The only difference, we made 2 changes on the scouting staff, and the coaching staff was virtually the same when we came in. The rest of the front office was the same. Mark Hatley was gone, and the director of college scouting, Bill Reese, was gone. Otherwise, everybody else was the same. And when you go into a new situation, before you even take the job, you want to know the answer to questions. Why was this guy taken over this guy? Why did they do that? It's all part of the interview process that Jerry Angelo went through. And so, we had the answers to all these questions. And we knew. And then when you're talking to the scouts too, because they're obviously in the draft room on draft day and knew what was going on. And Brian Urlacher was always the guy that was going to be, given that he was there, was always going to be the guy that the Bears took. I think it was the 9th pick in the 2000 draft. So, now to go back to the Bayless thing, you go back to the history. He was working here in Chicago, worked for the Chicago Tribune. The relationship between him and Mark Hatley was ugly. And I'm saying it mildly, that it was ugly. And that's one of the reasons Mark Hatley left, is because of that. It got very, very personal. There were attacks on Mark's family,
Wow.
It was almost legendary. And we heard all this stuff when we came in June of 2001. And I've known Mark for years and years and years, going back into the mid 80s when he was with Kansas City and I was with the Giants. Real good guy, excellent evaluator. And obviously, he, right after he left here, he's with Green Bay just a short time after, as an executive there. Well respected around the league. But the relationship between him and Skip Bayless was ugly, to say the least. And Bayless is going to say what he wants. Mark Hatley's not around, unfortunately, to contradict him. But knowing the answer of what happened, I can't.
Well, I know Barflies want to get into the questioning, but I have one question I'm going to pull that I just think it's relevant, because this football player, I'm not going to hype anybody up. Urlacher, I believe, changed the position. I think he most definitely, I could put my name to it, is not only a better human being than his counterpart that went into the Hall of Fame at the same position, but I think when you look at statistics and the scheme that Urlacher was being asked to do, the statistics don't show what he could have been in a different scheme, being asked to cover in the cover two and get deep down the middle and sacrifice some of the tackle stats that they look for. So,
well, he still had a number of tackles, and that goes without saying. He was a dominant player, but what he was the most athletic middle linebacker ever to play the game up to that point. Mm-hmm. And, he was a freak athlete for his size, had just tremendous size, great range, great instincts. But I think part of it was that the right coach came along with the right defense at the right time. And then the marriage of Lovie Smith and Lovie's Tampa 2 defense, cover 2 defense, with Brian Urlacher, the player, became a marriage that turned Brian Urlacher into the Hall of Fame player that he became. Mm-hmm. And you go back and Lovie was Tony Dungy's was a linebacker coach for Tony Dungy at Tampa when Dungy had a lot of success, and that's where that Tampa 2 started. And when you look at the players, the most important players on the defense that, according to Tony Dungy, what you're looking for was you had to have a 3 technique and you had to have a will linebacker. And, that goes back to the players that Tampa Bay had, at the time. And so when Lovie came in, he knew Brian Urlacher was a very good football player, but at the same time, he wanted a will linebacker and he wanted a 3 technique, and that was, his first draft. We drafted Tommy Harris to play the 3, and we were lucky that he fell into our laps at the 13th pick, and we already had Lance Briggs. Now, Lovie, when he looked at just the physical numbers of Lance Briggs from when, from the combine from the previous year, he was like, well, I don't know if this is going to be good enough. He's a 4.77 guy. I need a 4.5 guy playing that will linebacker. And we just told him, Lovie, he plays 4.5. Don't worry about it, because that's what Lance Briggs gave. Yeah. Lance Briggs was the most instinctive linebacker I've ever been around. And,
really?
But then with the combination of Lance and Brian and Brian's ability to cover the center of the field like he did, he was able to do things. We were able to do things with that defense that Lovie never could do when he was at Tampa Bay, using basically the same scheme. And a lot of that had to do with, obviously, we had great personnel, but a rare player in Brian Urlacher.
Now, before we go to I got to ask you, I'm putting you on the spot. Now that Urlacher's in the Hall, if you had to pick the next Bear to go into the Hall, and one of these 5 guys I'm going to give you, Jimbo Covert, Devin Hester, Olin Kreutz, Charles Tillman, and Jay Hilgenberg. You only get one.
One, I already said it out Saturday night. It's Olin Kreutz. And
there you go. Go ahead.
In fairness, I was around Olin for most of his career here, so I know the kind of person he is. I know the kind of player he is. I know the fiery leader he was. I was not, and Jay's a real good friend of mine, and has been since I came to Chicago. But I've never been around Jay, the football player, and I've never been around Jimbo, the football player. So, so I'm biased, in my opinion.
You're always honest, though.
But as far as I'm concerned, Olin's one of the best centers to ever play the game. There's nobody tougher. There's nobody who was a better leader. That was his football team. And he ran the locker room. And anybody, you can go to any player, and Brian mentioned it in his Hall of Fame speech the other night. You ask any player on that team who was the leader of that team, it'll be unanimous. It was Olin Kreutz. And, he was a fiery leader, but he also, everybody else feared him, because if you didn't do it the right way, he'd probably knock your ass out. And there's players that happen to.
Yeah,
he did break the jaw of one player. So, you were going to do it right. And Olin is a great guy. Off the field, he's not as fire as he was on the field. in the locker room, but I've got the deepest amount of respect. But, I think that, hopefully before I'm gone, that Devin, Briggs, Jay, Jimbo, and Charles will all be in the hall. Will they all get in? Probably not, but I hope a high percentage of them does.
Bears Grl.
I'm here monitoring the chat room and our Ask BHL questions. And the chat room's kind of divided on that last question. So a couple of votes for Olin, a couple of votes for Hester. But everyone seems to agree that all of them deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, hopefully sometime soon. So most of the questions for Ask BHL tonight are actually about the current Bears. So a couple of the ones that I want to get to and have you guys react to are Tooch at Santucci_John wants to know, of these 4 wideouts, which ones do you think make the 53? Wims, Bellamy, Fowler, or Gentry?
You're asking me?
Yeah, asking both of you guys.
Okay. I don't think Gentry has a chance to make this team at all. Number one, he's too slow. He's not the physical fit for the scheme. And number two, he can't play special teams. And that's why you go back to last year, he was brought up because of injury a couple times from the practice squad. He was on for a week or two and then back down on the practice squad. The reason being, he could give the team nothing on special teams. When you're the 4th, 5th, and 6th receiver, you have to be a special teams player. And now, who's going to be those last guys? Bellamy has got a very good chance because he has made some plays when asked to play at the wide receiver position, and he is an excellent special teams player. I'm going to be interested. I think Wims, with the way he's played in both camp and practice at camp and in the game, I think he's almost locked up a roster spot, unless he really, like I was saying before, guys tend to level off. If he levels off and the arrow stops going up, then, I could change my opinion. But what I'd like to see is, does he get an opportunity to play on specials over the course of the next 4 games so we can see if he's got that talent to be a cover guy?
I'm with Greg here. The 2 names, everyone's always on me, but I'm about a player that can be set back or disappoint and improve. And Bellamy, so far, to me, I've kept my eye on him and Kevin White. I'm disappointed that they didn't play White, but Josh Bellamy has stepped up. And when players do, and they play specials that well, you got to be excited about the kid and what they're doing, because I think the kid has always gotten open, Greg. Bellamy has been able to he just hasn't been able to be consistent catching the football. What he is consistent is playing specials. Wims, to me, is a lock. I've seen more in him in 6 plays, Greg, as I tweeted out, than I ever have seen in Kevin White. And that's not who he's playing against, just the athleticism, the ball tracking. And to Greg's point, you want to continue that showcase. You don't want to see him go out next week and, drop 3 balls that he should have had. He was out there like a maniac wanting to make plays, and on the film that our boy Greg Braggs Jr. has been able to show us, for me, not being able to go down there, Wims, to me, he's something special here, and you can't overlook that in my mind. So I'm definitely excited about that football player, and I agree with Greg. I want to see Gentry do it, and I want to see how he plays forward, but he's right. If you can't play specials with all those guys in front of you, it's either practice squad or he's going to get picked up by a team that plays a different philosophy.
Well, on top of that, he's a 4.65 guy. And on this team, what they look for is, faster than 4.65. He is what he is as far as speed and quickness and the ability to separate. Granted, he's got good hands, but there's a lot more to it than that. And what a lot of fans don't understand is you're going to have, and not just with this team, with any team across the league, when you get to that 4th, 5th, and 6th receiver, sometimes the guys that get cut are better wide receivers than the guys that stick on the roster because of their ability to play special teams. Because that's the most important thing when trying to put a squad together is you've got to have guys who can play on teams.
Question for you, Greg. Pass rushers are at a premium. Any reason to believe that the Bears could possibly pull off a trade for a pass rusher that could potentially help with the outside rush?
I think they are in a wait-and-see mode for that. Now, number one, they got a lot of sacks last week. And they've got two. They got two coming off the edge. Between Phipps had one and Isaiah Irving had one. And Irving only played about 18 snaps or something. He didn't play that much. He's a guy that I want to see a lot of going forward. I like the way he played in preseason last year. The little he got to play, he had injury problems last year. The little he got to play last year during the season, he flashed some stuff. He's strong. He's explosive. He's a very good athlete. You look at his testing numbers coming out. His numbers were very, very good. So he's a guy you want to see to make plays. And I think the Bears brass, both the coaching staff and the decision makers, they're in a wait-and-see mode on this. They want to see what some of these young guys can do. There's people out on the street that they could bring in that can, they're Band-Aids, and they can give you some production during the year. But we've seen them at their peak. We know what they are. They want to get somebody who has a higher ceiling, a younger player that has a future, not bring in the vet that, he can give you some good plays, but that's as good as he ever going to be.
Bill, thoughts on that?
Yeah, what about a lot of buzz is going on with the John Gruden, Khalil Mack situation to keep an eye on. If you were involved with the Bears, Greg, I mean, this is a premium pass rusher, so I don't know what it would take, but would you get involved in something like that?
I don't think there's a chance of a snowball in hell. The Raiders trade Khalil Mack. He's one of the premier defensive players in the National Football League. And the whole philosophy of the National Football League is to acquire talent, not give it away. And so I don't know if you could pay enough to get him. And they already, gave up the second-round pick next year in order to draft Anthony Miller this year. And by the way, I thought it was a good trade when they made the trade, and I think it's going to turn out to be a great trade because I think Miller's going to be a very, very good player. But at the same time, you don't have assets next year to be making trades, any more trades, because the one thing the Bears haven't had, and Ryan Pace has said, I want to build through the draft, but he hasn't had draft picks. And so you can't keep giving away draft picks and build through the draft. That's kind of counterproductive.
Exactly.
So, Greg, I want you to hear some sound from today's post-practice press conference. Coach Nagy was told that Trubisky has had 2 excellent practices after a lackluster practice on Saturday. What exactly has Nagy seen in Trubisky's preparation that helped his improvement?
He has. He's getting to see right now on tape. He's watching a lot of film, and on tape he's able to see now how it fits versus a particular defense. And it's hard because right now our defense is seeing a lot of the same plays, and so they're seeing formation tendencies that we're not scheming at all. And so there's going to be tighter windows for him. And yesterday he had several of those. I talked about the anticipation. Today I thought he followed it up. And so the one thing with him that you noticed is even if he has a really good throw, it's the same as if there's a poor throw. Is he's just right to the very next play. He might feel good about it, but then after 5 seconds, get the play call, stay in that routine, and roll.
Go ahead and react to that, guys.
Well, my feeling is that he's coming to the point where he's more comfortable within the scheme. And this, you go back to Kansas City last year in a quote that Alex Smith had. Last year was his 5th year in that scheme, and he said it took him 4 years to really feel real comfortable within that scheme. It's a very complex offense. There's a lot to learn, and really I think they're just scratching the surface of what they're going to be able to do with this offense. You're not going to see everything this year. And it's because not only is it Mitch Trubisky's first year in the offense, it's the rest of these players, and Mitch has no prior knowledge of most of the skill people he's playing with, as far as the the wide receiver position. He hasn't played with them, and so he's got to get a feeling for what they can and can't do. Coaches got to get a feeling for what they can and can't do. But I think as far as Mitch goes, you learn by repetition. He's seeing things in offense. He's quicker making decisions as he's getting more involved in the scheme, and they get more practice reps, and he's just becoming more comfortable and more at ease. He's going to make mistakes, and you'd rather see him make the mistakes in practice. I've read some stuff where it said, well, people are concerned about the interceptions he's thrown. I could care less about interceptions that you throw in practice. Because number one, you're going to take more chances in practice than you ever are in a game. And so you're going to want to see if you can make that particular throw against that particular coverage, and can you make that real tight window throw? So you're going to take those chances. It doesn't cost you anything to make a mistake in practice. You learn from the mistake. You get to watch it on tape, and then you go out and practice the next practice or the next day, and you try not to make the same mistake again. It's when it happens in games that you worry about it. Don't worry about what happens in the practice. The important thing is that they got to grow.
Yeah, Captain Obvious will write about that tomorrow. Don't worry. But I just want to say, to the point of the coach, I thought it was important for me to hear, because you always hear sound bites and run-of-the-mill kind of comments. But the thing that he pointed out, really kind of highlighted, was the fact that he doesn't get too excited about doing something good. He doesn't get too excited about messing up. I'm paraphrasing there, but to my understanding of a player, especially at that position, and what Greg's talking about, obviously we spoke about it 100 times about interceptions, is now. That's how you learn. Human beings learn people and body language, and making mistakes is the key to learning. So that's when you want to do it. And having a guy that's doing it, as well as not getting too caught up in anything good or bad, to me, is the kind of disposition you want at this position. And how quick he, digests this playbook is going to be important, because, Greg talked about Alex Smith, because he processes it a certain way doesn't mean that this guy could process it a certain way, and vice versa. It's going to be interesting to see how they use these weapons, because there's certainly a 180 degree in the amount of talent the Bears have, not only in the backfield, but at tight end and head coach and offensive coordinator, as well as the quarterbacks and receivers. So it's exciting right there to hear your coach be excited about this young play caller who seems to be ascending, Bears Grl, during the weeks of practice. And it's Thursday, Cincinnati is really going to be a testament to where, he is getting ready to play this new offense.
Well, it's interesting because Trey Busy.
I gave you. I'm sorry, but I
no, go ahead, Greg.
I could go for about 30. I told Phil I could go for about 30 minutes. It's been about 45, and I got a couple things I still got to do. So I got to cut out, my friend.
No worries, Greg. We appreciate you jumping on with us at Bears Hour Live. Thank you for giving the time. Obviously, your expert analysis. I'm sure the Barflies are very excited to have you on.
They are, absolutely, and they want more Greg. So we will see you as the season progresses.
Okay, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good night, guys. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
Okay.
So where I was going with what you and Greg were talking about in terms of Nagy and Trubisky was Trey Busy was at practice with a couple of us on Saturday. And he's reminding the chat room that Nagy actually went off on the offense on the field. And we actually caught a bit of video on that. So it comes as no surprise to him and a lot of us that Trubisky's Sunday and Monday practices were a heck of a lot better. When you're talking about the Bengals, that's going to take me to the next question. So, Ask BHL. We had a question coming from, where did it go? There it is, Ryan Cox, at Mr. Ryan Cox. He says, who will you be keying in on during Thursday's game against the Bengals?
Well, you've got to be keying on Kevin White. I mean, Mitch Trubisky and how the first team offense goes. I'm all about seeing where Anthony Miller is. There's so much to be excited about because what you saw at the Hall of Fame game was a bunch of guys competing to impress their head coach. You know, Greg talked about a guy I was very excited about, you know, Coward, and getting that opportunity from coming from the defensive line to the offensive line and the way he performed. How does he perform this week? That's going to be something interesting. Kylie Fitz, he talked about. Fitz had a sack versus a tight end. A lot of people jump up and down, pound their chest about, you know, he got a sack. And yes, I'm glad he finished. He made that play appropriately, but it's versus a tight end. How does he come back and answer some of Greg's concerns against a physical offensive tackle? How is he going to play? You know, there's so many parts to this football team that are exciting. Thursday night, when you get a piece or a taste or 2 series, 3 series, however they're going to decide how they're going to use the first team offense and defense, because remind yourselves, you didn't see the first team defense either on the football field against the Ravens. So guys like Akeem Hicks, who have been absolutely dominant in practice and are focused this year. You know, he talked about Olin Kreutz. You know, Akeem Hicks rings a bell for me and the kind of person he is and what he means to this football team. And obviously the other guy we had on the show, Kyle Long, you know, how's he going to be? Is he going to play? Is he going to be in a couple reps? All of this stuff is how they use James Daniels. I'm excited to see this football player. You know, Daniels, Long, and Cody Whitehair are pillars. They're pillar pieces to this offensive line in my mind. So how do the other parts fit? You know, Leno has been solid. So this could be, I wanted to ask Greg, most impressive positional group at practice. So I'm going to ask, you know, you and Aldo later or tomorrow night, we'll talk about it. But I really wanted to see what stood out solidly. You know, I know the wide receivers and all that, but I think this offensive line, you know, is going to be something to watch come against Cincinnati too. There's a lot to answer that question, but, you know, Anthony Miller, Tariq Cohen, how's he going to be used? Some of these younger guys. There's so much. That's why I love preseason games. That's why I watch every second, every snap, every play. Anybody that told you the blog, it's boring after kickoff, you just don't understand the makeup and how you build a franchise from the foundation up. So I get excited for every game. In fact, sometimes I even get anxious and nervous, BG, because I want to see this team go in the right direction and be successful.
You and me both. You mentioned Anthony Miller. Earlier today, He was asked, which player has he studied the most?
The following program is
rated R.
That's not Anthony Miller.
Anthony Miller is about to tell you what he feels about certain bloggers.
A lot of people say I'm similar to Steve Smith, you know, AB, those type guys. You know, I could either play physical or, you know, I could give you some feet. A guy I watch a lot is Chad Johnson, actually. He has the best feet, in my opinion, of any receiver in history. His feet are just incredible. And I go to his videos for a lot of moves, actually.
So is that at the top of the route stem? Is that getting into the route?
Yeah, top of the route, the beginning of the route, everything. His releases, everything. He's just so tight and so fast to be that big.
So thanks to WSCR Score Sports Radio for that audio clip. My question to you, Phil, is do you see similarities between Chad Johnson and Anthony Miller?
You know, it's funny because when I was doing the Desirables movies, you know, Anthony Miller was one of them, and I comped him to Chad Johnson because of the flamenco-esque dancer type footwork. You know, there is a certain, I'm so serious. If you've ever seen a flamenco dancer, a male dancer, not female, obviously, they're so pointed and precise, but they are acting in the process of it. And when I looked at this kid's footwork, you know, Chad Johnson, say what you want, he talked and he went out there to back it up. He wasn't afraid. And this football player reminded me of Chad Johnson in that too. He wants the ball in a critical situation. He's going to talk the talk. I know there was a quote from Nagy about who's the biggest talker. Clearly Josh Bellamy, but 17's not far behind. 17's a rookie. 17's burning Kyle Fuller on tape. 17 is running routes that are so precise and so precision-oriented. Again, I didn't get to see every rep at camp. I'm seeing what I'm seeing from you guys. But what you're seeing is a professional receiver who plays with a chip on his shoulder. And that right there is so exciting. And it really does remind me, BG, of an even more athletic Chad Johnson. As athletic and big as Chad was, this kid, he's got everything. And you talk about wow players, when you see them, they just pop out at you and you're like, oh my God, you know, you have something special here. And that's what you have here. So I'm excited about this football player. I think it's funny how he brought that up, and it's a great comparison.
So the next question actually is also about Anthony Miller, and it comes from someone who's been absent from the chat for a while, at Prophetic CZ, Boofed Up Otaku. He wants to know if he's getting a bit carried away thinking that Miller is going to get under 800 yards.
I don't think, you know, these numbers and the over, under, everything based on injury, opportunity. The quarterback gets hurt, numbers get swayed. But if you're just looking at the talent-wise as well as the offensive philosophy, you know, I talked about whims in the open, you know, with the question that was asked. Miller is over whims and impressive, and he hasn't even played in a game yet, but you could just see. So it's going to be obviously exciting to see this football player. And we haven't even got to Robinson and Gabriel. So these names of these players, as well as the philosophy of the offense, there's no doubt this kid could put up numbers. Because if I was to grade them just on the video and watching and assessing each route, which I fanatically do, and watching them over and over, I hate to tell you or break it, he's the best one out there. And that includes every other veteran that's there. Now, Allen Robinson's coming off an injury and what have you. So in just assessing, like if we were in a gym class and I'm looking at athletes, Anthony Miller in a wide receiver drill is like what you want the book to read. So when you get to that, and I'm not hyping it up, I'm like, I'm blown away by it. I'm like, is this really what is going on with this kid? Because it's that impressive. And Greg said it. It looks like they absolutely got a steal in the second. So remember all that talk me and Aldo and everyone had to hear about? They gave up what to get a second round pick that turns out to be Anthony Miller. Now, years down, that's why I always say, can you just wait and just shut it and just see how it goes. There were guys in a window talking about Tariq Cohen couldn't play in the NFL. He's too small. That stuff, let's see a player and their heart and what they have. For all Tanner's listening to this show and is pissed off and has worked his butt off and is going to prove people wrong. I'm never going to sell. I've been the hardest and harshest critic on Josh Bellamy. But if I am going to consider myself truthful analyst and go after everybody when I know they're BSing, then how can I deny what I'm seeing Josh Bellamy do? Now, granted, he was injured, but I liked what I saw, Bellamy. I liked what I'm seeing in you in practice. You're not dropping the football. Good. Now let's see Cincinnati and going forward where Josh does too. So those are a lot of names, BG. Kevin White, we absolutely know nothing about him. Anybody thinking, is the right thing, and Kevin's nothing. Kevin could not make this roster. If I had to pick Wims or White, gun to my head, and I'll ask any barfly, gun to your head, you gotta win. Wims or White, right now, who would you take? And that, to me, is pretty simple. So that's where this team is. And if you're improving and the competition, I always say it, Nelson, competition breeds success. Who's going to rise to the top? Who's going to make plays when it's critical scrimmages? That's what I hate about people, BG. I would have had a rant tonight about it. Oh,
I think you have one right now.
It's just a scrimmage when it suits their point. But when it's like, well, he didn't do it in the game. You can't have it both ways. That's why I say, shut up about the grocery. He's going to be bagging, groceries. He's going to be working at Taco Bell. I've heard that my whole life. But guess what? There's more undrafted free agents in the Hall of Fame than there are number one overall picks and first-round picks. So just think about where you find these players and who steps up and stands out. And finally, you have a coaching staff that's going to do it. They're going to play who's best. I believe that in my heart and soul. And if it's not real, I'm breathing it into life right now, PG, because it's the most important thing for this team to win is play the best, be the best. That is simple, but for so long, the politics of the NFL, coaches and GMs and owners getting involved, mess it all up. So hopefully this is Nagy's team, Nagy's 53, and that's where they're going with it.
So the chat room is reacting to your impromptu poll, and here are the results. Wims, not White, Wims, taking Wims for sure, and Wims.
It's pretty much Wims, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I don't see any other write-in votes, but I do see tons of write-in questions.
Let's
go. Are you ready for these? All right. So the first one is from Jose, a.k.a. Oso54, and it is driving up some debate in the chat room. He wrote in, can I ask Phil if he's worried about Bush seating Amos for the starting position? Dion didn't practice yesterday. He was injured, and we're not sure if he practiced today. And there's a bit of a debate going on in the chat room. So I want your take on that.
I mean, I'm not going to be hypocrite. You want competition. Amos knows he's there. So the Amos that I see on tape better be the guy that shows up, because that's who I believe he is. To me, it's not even close in what the Bears have in a safety and a strong safety and a communicator on the back end. He's a no-nonsense guy. He's all about football and this job. We had him on the show. You could see his personality and his demeanor. He doesn't like to lose. And he certainly, you thought Dion's hit was good in a preseason game. You see that every game with Amos. And to the point of the coach. He made a point earlier last week. I can't remember, Saturday or Friday, or it's the first day after the game, I think, where Amos had an opportunity to take a shot and kill shot at Miller along the sideline. And he didn't. He pulled up. And he showed, the coach, Nagy, said, that's what you see in an Amos. You know, he could have said, look at me, but he understands the importance of this young football player to the team and decided against it, and that's a veteran move. Things like that, unselfish football plays from Amos as well as the tape, don't lie to me, all the bloggers that I just know. As Greg was talking about the interception gate, bloggers were a part of that, and writers that don't know football. And it's unfortunate. It's honestly nothing against them trying to get a click, but it is against me telling you the truth. If you expect me to tell you, I'm going to tell you. They're full of crap. They're full of crap about Amos. There's no doubt in my mind what he is and what he means to them. And the team right now, obviously, he's the starter. Did you see him on the football field? Or did you see Dion Bush? That says everything you want to know. There was 2 starters that played in that game listed on the depth chart. Does anybody know who they were? It was Eric Cush, and there was one other starter. And I can't remember who the other one was. But there was one other starter. I think it was Deion Sims that played in the game. Because all the tight ends played except Burton. So I think those 2 starters listed on the depth chart were the only 2 players that played in that football game. So think about that and what Greg was saying. They're assessing where does this talent lead and are they going to compete to beat out who's in front of them? So I'm not worried also at all because I'm so happy about Adrian Amos.
So another write-in question is from Trey Busy. In the chat room, he says he thinks wide receiver Robinson is still trying to gain trust back in his knee. It's almost like he's on cruise control mode. Still making plays, but not going off like he can. Phil, are you worried about the knee?
Honestly, I didn't think he'd be this far along, to be perfectly honest, in regards to what he's doing at camp. Now, he didn't play in the game, and to Trey's point, going through a serious injury like that, there is these flashes. You know, I've been concussed quite a few times in my day, and I remember after the second one, there was a week or 2 of me getting back onto the football field and going through this cruise control, as he's talking about, where I wasn't playing like I normally play because I was thinking and worrying. And really, my wide receiver coach put it to me right in my face. You're going to go half-ass, you're going to get hurt. And it's the total truth. So I'm not worried so much about it, but I totally understand the mental makeup of that injury coming back and where the team is in regards to using him as well as he is. But there were some plays where he's diving for the football that you guys put up, and he's making plays over the top in the bucket. So he hasn't wowed like a Miller has on tape yet, but I think it's there. And in fact, I'm happy with where he's at, but I'm excited too.
We had a question from Nelson Daniels, also known as @BearsLover1885. He says, thoughts on the potential of Eddie Jackson in the second season?
Yeah, he's an interesting guy, someone I want to see as well. How does he take a step? Everybody's, putting him in pen and saying Eddie Jackson's, the next coming and this, that, and the other. And if you listen to Bears Barroom, which most of you have, you know how I felt about that kid on draft day. I thought it was a steal on draft day. I loved the pick. I wasn't worried like Shane about the rod in his leg, but I was happy as could be about this football player. But again, Deion Bush, is he pushing him? Houston Carson has he has an interception in the scrimmage. He's got a couple interceptions these past 2 days. What is he going to bring to the table? So to me, competition only makes you stronger. Those two players, though, I feel very confident in, and Eddie Jackson is somebody I haven't seen. Like, I've seen Amos flash. I've seen Fuller. I've seen Amukamara. I've seen even Bryce Callahan and Crevon LeBlanc flash. I just haven't seen, when Nelson's asking me, I can't even think of a play that I've seen Greg, Aldo, Ryan, all these guys going out there, Christian Shanafel today, going out there showing us what's going on at practice. I don't remember an Eddie Jacks play, but clearly he didn't play either, Nelson. So clearly he's in his out as regards to being that free safety starting, and I'm sure, based on the attitude he brings to the table, that he's going to be ready to rock and roll when it's time.
So Aldo was predicting 6 interceptions for Eddie Jackson.
Wow. Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come in here and explain why the 6 interceptions. I think this young man is ready to blossom a year under Coach Fangio. I think that the defensive secondary is a strength. I know that this team needs a pass rush in order to get interceptions, but I believe that Vic Fangio is going to come up with a way to manufacture some pass rush. And it's imperative that we get Roquan Smith in camp soon, because he's going to be a key to the blitzing schemes that Fangio is going to come up with. If Roquan gets in there in plenty of time and he's starting by game 1 or 2, then I think Eddie Jackson will get 6 interceptions.
Now, Aldo, you were out there at camp with Bears Grl from Canada. She crossed the border. They stamped her passport.
They did.
She came into Bourbonnais meeting Barflies. You're kind of answering my question. You guys are there. Aldo, you've been there a couple times now. So you saw one non-padded, and then you saw a couple padded, which I was freaking ecstatic about the coach going after a game and going into full pads, because John Fox, he totally would have had that Saturday morning shirts and shorts with a helmet. Go out there. All right, let's run the fullback dive a couple more times to Mike Burton. You're out there. You're seeing physical practices, people getting after it. You're telling me, you're answering my question, I think, best solid group that you saw. You're saying the secondary, huh, Aldo?
I do believe it's a secondary. Now, of course, just like Nagy said in the soundbite that we played earlier, the secondary does have the advantage of playing against an offense that isn't scheming to stop them. So they definitely isn't scheming to thwart their defenses. So there's definitely advantage. But I just get a sense that Prince Amukamara and Eddie Jackson are going to be interception machines. And when I say interception machines, I mean 4 to 6 or 7 interceptions each. Kyle Fuller, he probably won't get picked on as much as he did last year. Remember, he was the cornerback that most quarterbacks were going after. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that offensive coordinators have looked at the tape during the offseason and they have said to themselves, maybe we should try the other guy. And so I don't think that Fuller will get as many attempts at interceptions. And frankly, I just don't think he has. Well, I shouldn't say that he has the interception skills, because he showed that he did in that rookie season. But maybe in this Fangio defense that is less covered too and a little bit more man-to-man, Fuller is just not going to come up with the interceptions. What do you think about that? Am I off track there?
I don't know. Because, again, you're talking about if you hit it out of the park, the lack of pass rush, you might have to scheme it. There's been up and down buzz about Leonard Floyd. Football guys have told me he's looked like garbage, kind of like Robinson, coasting in cruise control. Then you got reports when you guys were out there that he was stepping it up, so that's good. Again, Johns is talking about him going to beat tight ends. That's not what I want to hear. I want to see him beat tackles, disrupt in the backfield. This is a guy that's a first-round pick. Aldo's worried about pass rush. Well, this is the guy that's supposed to bring it. Injury early, should be ready to go, rock and roll. That guy has a bullseye on him in my mind. He's got to do it. Roquan not there, to Aldo's point, 100%. That manufactured blitz and pass rush that this kid can close at on tape against Alabama, Florida, every team he's played, he shines, especially in coverage on the blitz and instincts. So Greg was talking about Briggs being the most instinctive. This kid, to me, is maybe 5 times more instinctive than I saw Briggs coming out of college. In my mind, that's how good this kid could be. So how that affects the back end, to Aldo's point, and what they're going to ask Fuller to do. Because there's a lot of times, Aldo, Fuller plays that off coverage. We talked about, I wanted to move him to safety because his play with eyes on the football is just, he's an athlete and he's tremendous. But it really took Vic Fangio to get in his butt and get him to the point where you're trailing and you turn and find the football and deflect it. And he dropped a few picks as he was being picked on too. So hopefully improve that. But I don't think you're wrong, but I don't think you're right. I think you're in the middle there. And I hate to be that way, but truthfully, I think Fuller is going to, he's been the most impressive defensive player to me overall from the weeks. Now, Akeem has been tremendous these last few days in pads and what have you, but Kyle's spotlighted because of these receivers, and he's been tremendous. And Prince not far behind, Aldo. You're onto something here. I said it. This defense is going to be ascending. I feel it, and I think the strength, to your point, is that back end, Aldo. I'm excited about what you saw and what it's matching up with what I believed.
So we got Barflies in the chat room. We're also at camp watching Fuller this past weekend. We have Aaron from Shy. He says Fuller isn't going to get thrown to, but he is feeling confident. And Trey Busy is saying that Fuller has shown some bully-ass things at camp, nasty picks in camp, out there snatching footballs from wide receivers.
Yeah, you saw him do it in the San Fran game. As this kid's confidence, Shane talked about Kevin White needing confidence. We talked about Kyle Fuller needing it. Last year, in a year, he was up against the contract and all of that. People were like, why match it? Let him go. You don't let homegrown talent go to a division rival of all places either. But needless to say, you saw on tape the ascension, the things that Aldo is talking about with Eddie Jackson. Let's see it. I don't know in this town that can't have nice things how Amos is always dissed, as same as Jordan Howard. Every catch, every ball Jordan Howard has been thrown, he's caught. Let's talk about that. He's putting the haters on his back, and I think he's going to carry them into the end zone and then jump ass backwards on them to get them off, because that guy I'm excited about, because he looks like he is in shape. He's right of mind. I had a panic attack when I saw he was limping at practice, like he got hurt by DeAndre Hall, I believe, came up and made a play. Another guy, Aldo, who's standing out here in the secondary. But Howard, I'm excited about where he's his numbers to me are going to be excited in what he does and how they use him.
Yeah. Hey, Phil, you mentioned Leonard Floyd, and one of the things that Vic Fangio said at his press conference late last week was that Floyd was still working through his knee injury. So that was a kind of a clue, as Fangio tends to do, that it's still not 100%. Now, what was encouraging is that when we looked at Floyd on one-on-one drills during practice this weekend, he was showing flashes. It looked like it's coming around. And so I wouldn't be too worried about Floyd. I think that the Bears are handling his injury situation well, and that they're letting him slowly get up to speed so that he can deliver. And I've got a news flash for you. This is something Bears Grl and I were going to hold on to.
Aww.
She's mad at me because I am going to reveal to you, Draft Dr. Phil, that on the way, as we were leaving practice yesterday, who do we see working out all by himself on the sled and banging that thing like he was angry at it and wanted to kick his ass and working up a sweat and looking ready to play football? No one but our man, Joel Iyiegbuniwe. And we got him on video. We got him on video talking, and we told him about the song, and he's agreed to come on Bears 100 Proof to hear the song that you wrote, produced, and sang about Joel Iyiegbuniwe. So that is a treat for you, Draft Dr. Phil. And I got to tell you, it never would have happened if it wasn't for Bears Grl sauntering up to him and him all of a sudden stopping what he was doing and saying, "Whoa, who do we got here?"
The Canadian vixen
was
approaching.
Breaking
news.
He was awesome. Yes, we just wanted to wave at him and say hello, and he walked on over and took photos and did video, and he was great. We are reaching out to him to get him on a upcoming August 100 Proof.
There you go. And so we'll post that video on at Bears Barroom, our Twitter account, tomorrow. And I'm sorry, Bears Grl, for letting the cat out of the bag, but I just got too excited. And, and the fact is that this guy is close to hitting the field, and we want to see him. Hopefully, he won't play this Thursday, but hopefully in the second, or really it's the third preseason game for the Bears, hopefully we'll see him out there, because I think this guy can really help this team.
Yeah, I'm excited about that football player, Aldo. Not just for the song. We were like,
really?
I want to see him play. We want to play his song, but at the same time, the kid is an athlete. So the fact that you're telling me he's out there after practice, hitting that sled and just getting his mind right, that's a nugget. That's an Easter egg, Jer. Out there, Air Chair loves Easter eggs, so that's a nugget that he's working. I was wondering where he is. Where is Iyiegbuniwe?
He was by himself on a totally different field, away from everybody else. And honestly, if it wasn't for how ridiculous the setup is there, where you literally got to walk all the way around every single field to get out, we wouldn't have seen him because he was tucked into this little corner. So
it was meant to be.
It was. I have one last
Mike Norse movie review.
There you go.
Kind of felt that way. My last Ask BHL is a double-ended one, because it's a quote tweet. So, friend of the Barroom, Mark Rohde, has been out there tweeting up a storm at Mark Rohde Sports, and he released earlier that Bears running back coach Charles London says that Jordan Howard, quote, probably catches 200 to 300 extra balls a day before and after practice, plus during special teams. And Nelson at Bears Lover 1885 wants you to react to that and says, what does this tell you about this player?
Hey, it tells me that this means something to him. Again, how many times have I talked about this football player and who he is and what he is, a running back first? on this show, we could pull tape of me saying the easiest thing to fix is somebody's ability to catch. I've done it with a 9th grader. I could do it with a college kid. I could do it with Jordan Howard, and a professional coach should. The guy has to want it. What does this mean? Not only is he here and he's made the jokes, but he's a different person. This game, he wears his father's T-shirt under his pads on every game since he was a kid. He still does it. He is a special and a unique human being. I don't think people appreciate him. Thus, I went to town and task on the tape because it never lies. The can't catch scenarios weren't true, that on tape he can. And he needed more repetition to make it so he never drops. Because I'll tell you, Matt Forte has dropped balls. Walter Payton has dropped balls. It happens. It's going to happen. But to see him working at his craft, that it means something, to me, that's a franchise player. That's somebody you want on your football team, just by the way he runs, but his attitude and approach. You could bring any person in here. He's going to be right out in front and leading the pack. And despite any theory of any radio personality or writer, blogger out there in Chicago, the nice things we appreciate at the Bears Barroom. So Jordan Howard, E.A. Boonaway, these guys, Amos, these guys that are just overlooked and underrated, we love them because there really are too few and far between players like this in the history. So when you see them, you appreciate them. And to hear that, I read that quote, BG, today, and I was so excited because every clip, Aldo, you were there. Did you see him drop the football, BG or Aldo? Say, he dropped.
In the 3 practices that I went to, I saw Jordan Howard just drop one pass.
One pass. He dropped one.
Right.
So you saw him drop a ball.
One ball.
This is a guy that's never fumbled. He's fumbled one time in his career, and he's working on making every contested bad throw catch possible for not only himself but his team. And that echoes, when a running back coach says that, everybody knows about it because the whole team knows in the meeting room what Jordan Howard means to this football team. And they hear all the stories, all the jokes, because they joke with one another. They make fun of each other. That's what a family does. We do it here behind the scenes all the time. When I've done it as a football coach, I loved every player I coached. But they knew if we had a Friday night game, Saturday morning practice, film session before we go out on the football field, coach was pulling up 7 or 8 plays that was just to break someone's chops so that they didn't do it again, or that we can have a laugh at ourselves. Because if we can't laugh at ourselves, we can't be real, and we can't do this in life because you're just a fraud. So gotta laugh at yourself. Jordan clearly didn't want to laugh anymore and has gone to prove every person wrong. And I'm glad I shouted out David Kaplan on a play that Greg Braggs put up, and then on that one of these quotes about Jordan Howard, and he retweeted it to his credit. He's gonna be ready to come back and defend himself when Jordan's blowing up.
So I got to tell you, the best player we saw this weekend, in my opinion, was Tariq Cohen.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to agree with that, Phil. This guy
really
was
over Anthony Miller.
Yes, Tariq Cohen was making spectacular catch after spectacular catch, and on running plays, that stop and go that we've seen already, he was just unbelievable. This guy could really, I had him on the Mount Rushmore of running backs on the last 100 Proof or whatever show that was. And what I saw this weekend, it just solidifies my opinion. This guy was sensational. He was catching deep passes, just extending his hands out, and the ball would land softly into his hands. He would
10.5-inch hands, Aldo.
I know, unbelievable. And then they were doing some punting exercises where they had to catch multiple balls, and everybody was doing well, but he was the best. He would get 3 or 4 balls, catch them all at one time. He's just a phenomenal player, and he looks so comfortable and confident. This is going to be unbelievable. It really does.
It reeks off of him. BG, you said him too. That's exciting because all the buzz has been, we're here in Connecticut, and it's all about Anthony Miller. I'll tell you that. Even though the news stations here locally were talking about Anthony Miller, I couldn't believe it. So the hype is coming out in regards to him. Tariq Cohen coming in his second year, obviously he's going to have hype. But Aldo, what did I say after he got drafted? This is a chess piece that you can't even understand yet, and the critics and whatever about his size or where he played. This is Tyreek Hill in my mind type of athlete that could be even better because he could do what he can from the backfield, as you're talking about. The versatility. Could you imagine the frustration on me, Aldo, last year when this coward, dumb offensive coordinator's telling you he can't be on this field at the same time? Like, I'm just sitting there like, oh my God. Like, I don't know how to explain it to people. Like, if you're going to watch a game with me, you are going to be entertained, number one. Number two, if you don't like X's and O's, you probably don't want to sit near me because I'm going to be I'm going to pick out the guard that missed the block, and the guy next to me is like, how did you even freaking see that? I don't even know I just see it. And when I see guys like this, Aldo, Tariq Cohen, and how to appropriately use him to disrupt linebackers, to open gaps and creases for a bruiser, and use the trickery and manipulation of formation with a guy like this could be exactly what you're saying. I compared him to Dave Meggett too, who Greg was involved in the draft with Dave Meggett to the Giants. Meggett was a chess piece that you could use. Parcells, put him at punt return, kick return, and he's playing the slot. He's playing tailback. He gets 25 carries in a game, goes for 200 or 187 yards. Next week, he's playing 10 snaps at slot. That's what this kid could do. I'm so glad to hear it because the first week, the buzz was about Tariq. I didn't really hear much about him. So this is great news. And Aldo, the confidence off this kid. Oh, my God. It's like when you have that crappy boss that's a micromanager and all of a sudden they get laid off or let go, and there's this new boss that comes in with a break room, and they're going to bring in bagged milk and creamers and coffee. You're going to get pizza. Those kind of, appreciate the work I put in because I've done it all week, and I'm going to make your team better, but don't play me at all during it just never. He was the worst boss ever. I'm so glad, but I'm glad we could have a laugh about it now. But in real life, this happens, and Tariq feels free. So he is going to be used. How more excited could people be? I know Mike Norris not excited about what's coming out of camp, but Mike, I'm completely excited about what's coming out of camp, and I'm excited for these Bears and what they're putting together because I think if this continues to ascend the way I believe, you're in for a surprise, and that's not where I go. I'm going to keep it neutral right now. my excitement meter on this season's a clear 10. Like, I have not been excited about a football season about Bears on both sides of the football. Even the kicker is coming out with stories about how well he's looked. So I can't be more excited about these players and what's transpiring with Mitch. So let's bring this season. I'm excited for Thursday night. Every snap, I'm going to be watching it, tweeting out plays, talking about it. We got 100 proof coming up. I'm excited about what's going on with the Bears Barroom and Mike North's locks and picks.
Hey, let me tell you something before I turn it over to BG to close the show, because she has had a long day traveling around the world.
Traveling.
She needs to get that sleep so that she can go earn the bucks.
Uber driver. She was the backseat driver. Turn right here.
Exactly. Well, I got some stories to share on 100 Proof about our times together driving, and the Tooch, too, giving me directions on how to get the bourbon. I ended up in Iowa. but I just want to say real quick, and this is something that we can talk about. real quick. And this is something we can talk about at length later. But Brett Maley, who writes for BearsBarroom.com, said, I disagree with Mike North saying, that they're not going to win more than 4 or 5 games. But Brett says, the one thing that worries me, that makes Mike's prediction perhaps going to come true, is that Vegas agrees with Mike, and Vegas usually gets it correct. More times than not, those guys are in it for the money. Now, I'm not a big Vegas gambling guy. I don't go by that. But Brett does make a good point, and that's something for us to talk about either on 100 Proof or the next time we get Mike North on.
I like Brett. I don't like worrying about Vegas, Brett, in August.
Yeah,
don't go down the Mike North's, what is it, the Trail to Oz?
The Yellow Brick Road?
Yeah. Mike North's Brick Road. I hope he's not hiding behind the curtain over there.
I was just going to say, it feels like Mike is now the wizard.
That's what we're going to call him.
You're all still competing for positions on the Yellow Brick Road with me.
There you go.
All right, we better close the show.
We do. I just want to bring it back to Cohen for a second, because he was the topic of the chat room while you were talking, Phil. Trey Busy says, it seems like everyone knew Cohen was special last year, but his coaches and those who may have been sleeping on him, according to Air Jer 54. Let's wrap up this Bears Hour live.
I see what he did there.
You saw that, huh?
I saw what he did there. At first I was thinking, is he looking in the window? But I see what he did. You're smart, Jer. You might be slow, but you are smart. Very well done. I want to thank Greg Gabriel, BG.
Yeah.
Pro Football Weekly, The Score, WSCR, Greg Gabriel coming on the show, bringing it tonight, giving the Barroom and the Barflies something to manja on. That would my grandfather, manja.
Yeah, I didn't have dinner. I definitely need some manja.
The Uber didn't give you backseat pizza?
No, but they did have chargers for my phone.
Oh, look at that. Something I need. If I go to Bourbonnais, I gotta have 3 of those chargers. Yeah, I'll be talking to everybody.
You saw my tweet. So absolutely need to thank a couple of people who made it possible for me to be here tonight. So first and foremost, Bill's Burgers and Beer at 30 East Hubbard in downtown Chicago. Alden and I got a chance to go there today and meet Aaron, who was at the game with his son Paolo yesterday. And food was awesome. That burger sustained me all the way till an hour and a half ago when I got home from Chicago.
Sincerely, I cannot wait to get back there. And they got this pretzel there, Phil. When you get to town, Phil, we're gonna go over there. They got a pretzel there.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not making any jokes about your height or anything, but this pretzel literally is bigger than you are. I mean, this thing is huge, and it was delicious. It was just delicious. Hey, somebody, there's gunshots on this music track. I'm not sure.
Yeah, can we change that, please?
I'm not sure.
Thanks.
What happened there.
Chicago's coming with you to Canada.
So
my
also
wife came down to there was 37 shootings over the weekend in Chicago. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's a normal day.
I protected BG. Don't worry.
Yeah, you had her. You had her protected. The Godfather.
I was safe. Absolutely need to thank Aldo and everyone else who was at Camp American Airlines for delaying my flight almost 2 hours, but still getting me home. That Uber driver who made sure I got home just in time to record. And of course, all of the Barflies in our chat room. Over 40 of you are still listening in. And all of the Barflies who asked questions online that we didn't ask on the air because Greg and Phil answered them. So Zeke at DeBears_54, Michael Guzman at Michael_G09, Barrelissimo at Barrelissimo1, and B Diddy at BQuinn34. We have an amazing 100 proof coming up for you guys this week on Wednesday with fantasy football expert and Bears fan Teddy Page. And of course, former Bears lineman Tommy Harris is going to be on. And guess what? We have even more people lined up already for next week. Those teasers will be coming out. Yeah, those teasers coming out to you guys later this week. That wraps up this edition of Bears Hour Live, almost 2. We will see you all next week. Bye.
Always bringing it.
Oh my God, I'm so tired.
Bringing giant cuts of cake of Bears information. Like that grandmother that would just cut that giant slice and just put it, you gotta eat it. I'm like, I don't like cake. I only like ice cream cake. I don't like Italian cookies either. My wife gets all, how could you not like Italian? I go,
exactly.
Give me a chocolate chip.
Oh my God. And you say you're Italian?
Don't like the Italian cookies.
You had some egg milk with those Italian.